At the end of the war, a number of people become obsessed with purging the country of radicals.
You had this sort of explosion of pure American patriotism in 1919. You have the crackdown on the communists and the first real major American Red Scare in 1919. You have a crackdown on a lot of unions. You have a number of spectacularly violent strikes and strike breaking in that year. And all of this is usually attributed to the intensity of the pro-war propaganda campaign, which sort of had no place to go once the war, which was very brief, was over.
And on top of this, there was the growing power of the Socialist Party in America, which had remarkable gains between 1910 and 1917. The Socialist Party won many, many state and local elections. And so you had this sense that there was a relationship between foreignness, between immigration, and between these radical political ideas of anarchism, socialism, and ultimately communism.
Keep in mind, of course, that this is only 2 years after the Russian Revolution, and the Bolshevik menace of Russia was still very fresh in everyone's minds as a new force in the world. But the Red Scare after World War I did not have very much to do with a fear of the military aims of the Soviet Union. It was much more a fear of domestic subversion and a series of bombings, in fact, that occurred in the United States, in Washington, on Wall Street, and elsewhere, terrified Americans.
Attorney General Palmer and his ambitious assistant, J. Edgar Hoover, orchestrate a series of raids on alleged radical centers, arresting more than 6,000 people.
Without either search warrants or arrest warrants, they had held them in detention for long periods of time without bringing charges against them. They had especially singled out a lot of immigrants, a lot of aliens. The Supreme Court, which in this period was not the most progressive of the courts, at times drew the line or attempted to somewhat moderate this kind of hysteria.
It was really only in some cases that arose out of the Espionage Act in the First World War that the Supreme Court announced that the clear and present danger standard was applicable to freedom of speech. But a point I want to make here is that people went to jail for saying things in the First World War that nobody would have even thought it possible to convict people in the Second World War, during the Korean War, the Vietnam War, of saying those kinds of things. Opposition to the government, opposition to the war, and so on.